A joint event to mark Earth Day involving Cork Three Faiths Forum and the SMA and OLA Justice offices took place on the grounds of Ardfoyle Convent. The Three Faiths Forum, made up of Christian, Muslim and Jewish members, was established in 2016 with the objective of enhancing dialogue, understanding and cooperation between peoples of faith. The OLA and SMA Justice offices have for many years collaborated with each other and with other groups to bring attention to issues of injustice and to encourage a positive response to them. This event was such an occasion. It celebrated the common approach and values that Judaism, Islam and Christianity share to promote living justly and caring for creation. Each faith, in their scriptures and teaching, called for the nurturing and respecting of life on our planet and for the environment around us. Religions also have an important role in providing these values to a wider community and society in general. A point made in an address by Councillor Dan Boyle, who, as Deputy Lord Mayor of Cork, made an address to those who attended.
Where faith communities can remind us of the right road in terms of the quality of that relationship is that we should never be misusing or abusing that relationship. And it's important that there is a faith-based approach to why that is wrong. What are the values? What are the moral equivalents that we should be doing of thinking of life differently, of thinking of our relationship with nature? Where faith communities have a particular strength is reminding us that our time is transitory, our time is ephemeral, but the planet in which we have our existence, in which we enjoy our existence, depends on future generations and the planet itself having that same ability.
Cork Three Faiths Forum members, Femida Nahid, myself, Claire Laurel, she's just in the blue, and Elaine Murray in the green, will in different parts of the ground explain the Muslim, Jewish and the Christianity views on use of the world's resources, caring for and preserving nature and sustaining the human life. I will start with the faith perspective of Islam. As we know that sustainability broadly defined as ensuring that the needs of the future generations are met without compromising the needs of the present, as the central principle of many initiatives and the guiding principle of the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which was adopted by all its member states in 2015. This agenda articulates 17 goals of safeguarding the well-being and security of the life through human, animal, plant, and soil health, in addition to the optimal performance of infrastructure, cities, and communities. Such critical and far-reaching goals require participation of the largest possible number of actors, extending beyond governmental and non-governmental agencies, as sustainability needs many drivers, appealing to the religious principles and rules that support its represent an important motivation force for environmental participation. Islam on the conduct of human beings towards the environment can be an essential tool for the strengthening of the sustainable policies and actions, enough improved ethical and moral relationships towards nature and with each other. The word earth in Arabic is translated as al-earth, which is used for 545 times in Quran. The prophetic traditions and their teachings dealt extensively with many environmental aspects, such as preserving natural resources, reclamation of the land, maintaining the cleanliness of the environment. Sustainable behavior is promoted through criticism of overconsumption, as Prophet, peace be upon him, showed and forbade extravagance in the consumption or any form of luxury. He urged moderation in all aspects of life, led by the examples. That is what Quran emphasizes. The focus of such teachings could spread the awareness and willingness of the large Muslim population worldwide toward environment sustainability as an essential principle of conduct. According to the teachings of Islam, the essential element of nature, earth, water, fire, forest, the light, belong to all living things and not only to the human race. Islam has emphasized the importance of preserving the environment and protecting natural resources. Islam can provide practical and comprehensive solutions to humankind as many current environmental challenges. The Quran and the Prophet Sunnah is the tradition or the practices of Holy Prophet, also considered as a guiding light in promoting the concept of sustainable development in Islamic countries and throughout the world. The Quranic principles for preserving it sets general laws that determine the extent to which humans benefit from various natural resources. God Almighty commanded human beings to avoid misusing natural resources and abstain from any action that would destroy and degrade the environment. The Almighty has made the human race the guardian over natural resources. This falls under the guarantee of the right to resource, provided that they are not being abused or destroyed. The first principle that directs Islamic teachings toward environmental sustainability is the concept of guardianship. The fact that a person is considered the caliph or guardian implies that he can benefit from that God has created this land or this world without overindulgence, because it is not for him alone but for the society and for the future generations. He must take all the necessary steps and measures to ensure the preservation and maintenance of these properties and should pass them on to succeeding the generations in the best way possible. Conceptualization of sustainable development as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. Therefore, sustainability is embedded firmly in Islam, and man is an entrusted guardian of the nature and must coexist in harmony with all other creatures. Therefore, all humans must respect, care for, and preserve the environment. This management of natural resources is often portrayed in Quran and clearly marked as a corruption. Human beings who mismanage natural resources, including excessive environmental exploitation, resulting in industrial pollution, damage to the ecosystem, recklessness, and mismanagement of the natural resources, are the abhorrent to Almighty God, as appears in the explicit verses of the Quran, as Quran says in 564, and they strive throughout the land, causing corruption. Allah does not like that corruptors. There are so many other talks, there are so many other verses of the Quran which I might reflect as soon as we proceed our sessions. So I go over to, you want to, yeah.
Okay. So the idea was that as each faith presents their perspective on the environment, that each of us would also give a little response to it, in terms of how, like, the Jewish tradition would respond to resources, which Hamida was talking about. So what I chose was something from Job. It says, "But ask the beast, and they will teach you, the birds of the sky, and they will tell you. Or speak to the earth, it will teach you, the fish of the sea, they will inform you. Who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this?" So, how important the resources are to us, just in order to live our lives. Thank you. Elaine, please.
Thank you. In response to Islam and earth resources, the Christian Gospels highlight that God provides food and water as fundamental provisions for life in the Gospel of Matthew. And we're encouraged as Christians to view food and water as sacred gifts and engage in practices that sustain rather than deplete these resources. And that piece from Matthew 6, is not life more than food and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air, they neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. And there's also the emphasis of the importance of care for the marginalised and the poor, also Matthew in chapter 25. And this includes advocating for policies and practices that ensure that all people have access to clean water, nutritious food, and a healthy environment. Come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me.
Hamida was talking about the Islamic view on our resources and how important that is. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the Jewish perspective on nature itself, how we look at nature itself. So how we see things, our attitude and our perspective plays a very important part in determining how we act and how we feel. And the Jewish attitude to nature is expressed most beautifully I feel, in Psalm 24, which is a psalm. A psalm is a song of David. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. King David was a harpist. He was a creator of songs about the wonders of God and the creator of ourselves and of our world. And in the Psalms they ask questions like, who is like unto thee? With questions like this from the Psalms, we are all asked to open our minds and our hearts to the wonders of the world, to its power and to its beauty, the power and the beauty of all of creation, the power and the beauty of all of mankind. The Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Old Testament, begins with the creation of the world, with giving our attention to nature itself, to the environment we live in, which significantly came before the creation of human beings. A Jewish sage is often asked, well, why wasn't man created first if he was so significant? And the answer came, so that humans might know that even the gnat was created before the human being was. We are immediately put in our place, that the world has a significance of its own, and out of the same forces which created the world came the forces which created us as human beings. Our connection is unquestionable. We are of God, and our being is God. But what of our relationship to the nature of which we are a part? And that's what I'd like to look a little bit at. Our own body is made of the same elements as the natural world, and it operates as nature does. And thus, on a very intimate level, we have the capacity to know the workings of nature as we understand the workings of our own body and our relationship to our body. The Torah, like all scriptures, has many ways in which its words can be interpreted. We can almost justify any human thought or actions with words from the scriptures. But if we look now from what we know is happening around us today, it does seem like the time is now to look at our relationship to the earth, and to look from our deepest and our most universal sense of spirituality. According to the Torah, we are duty-bound to respect nature's integrity, that it has its own integrity that was created by God, not by us. It has its own purpose, it has its own right to live, its own right to grow, to serve God, just as we have our own purpose and our own rights to live and grow and to serve God. The earth here is not simply for our benefit, but for its own benefit, in other words, for God's. Our job is to guard, according to the Torah, to guard, to protect, and to serve it, and to do what is necessary to sustain the life of the earth itself, and all, and to do what is necessary to sustain the life of nature as God's foundation. Maimonides, Moses Maimonides was one of the most important Jewish philosophers. In his Foundations of Torah, he says that the contemplation of the natural world and its awe-inspiring wonders leads us to love God. So another important Jewish principle is called Bal Tashit, which means to not destroy and to not destroy wantonly and unnecessarily. This applies not only to nature, but also to the resources that Famida was talking about that nature gives us. But it also applies to the creations of humanity, to the clothes we wear, to the things that we use, to our buildings, to the natural world. Maimonides again reminds us of the Jewish understanding of not wasting when he speaks about balance, the balance in all things, saying that eat only when hungry, take only what you need and only take what is necessary for your life. I think this is particularly hard for us today in our consumer society, where we think we need a lot more than we really do. But it's also an issue for us to change our habits and the way that we have of looking at what we have and what we want. It's not an easy task, but one to take on board. There are many passages on the Torah that talk specifically about the duty to do all that we can do to sustain life. In Deuteronomy, it says, "You take the eggs, but not the mother." It's a prohibition against killing things which bring about the total extinction of a species. It's certain other things, like in Deuteronomy 20, you don't cut down the fruit trees. This is like they were talking about a time of war, because the fruit is necessary to sustain life. You don't divert water away from people, because it's necessary for the sustaining of life. And this is constantly a refrain in Judaism. So, but interesting though, God, according to Jewish understanding, is also expressed through the destructiveness of nature, as well as through its nutritive and its supportive aspects for us. And it's another very important thing is that nature is not to be worshipped. It's not to be worshipped, but it is to be cared for. It's to be protected and to love as an expression of God's creation. So to survive, nature needs constant replenishing. It needs constant movement of air and water and earth. It needs time and stability to settle the nutrients of the earth and the organisms which create the goodness of the soil, which allows things to grow. It also needs the diversity of life, the animals, the microorganisms, the plants. All of these things are so incredibly necessary for the survival of nature as we know it. The cleanest air is produced in conjunction with the life of plants, and the interconnectedness of nature is vital to that survival. I think sometimes it's very hard for us to really understand all that, but I think to make the effort is important. Judaism also makes very clear that the survival of human life, though, is paramount. The human welfare overrides even our responsibility to nature. So this sets up, I think, a constant challenge to us, a constant process of defining and redefining the relationship between our needs as human beings and the needs of the natural world. As the world and situations are constantly changing, there's also a constant need to reassess, to see what needs to be done now, in this time, in this present time. From a Jewish perspective, the survival of human life, as I said, is paramount, and the duty to care and love nature and what nourishes our life is significant, but also what keeps nature itself alive is also what we're called to do. So I'll just end this by saying that, like what Jews say to each other in celebration and in meaningful times, l'chaim, which means to life. So l'chaim.
Thank you, Claire. In response to Judaism and respect for nature, the Christian doctrine of the incarnation, that God became human in the person of Jesus Christ, elevates the material world's value. The physical coming of Jesus signifies a profound affirmation of the created world's goodness and worth. In the Apostle Paul's letter to the fledgling Christian community based in Rome, he speaks about Christ's redemptive work extending to the whole of creation in Romans 8, implying that earth and all its forms are part of God's redemptive plan and thus are sacred. And the earth's sacredness is not just about spiritual symbolism, but also carries ethical implications, urging Christians to act responsibly and compassionately towards the planet and all its inhabitants. living sustainably in reverence for God's creation. And the words from Romans 8, the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to decay and will obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God.
Thank you very much. It's beautiful. Just now, my response to Judaism and nature and Islamic interpretation. As we know that it's essential characteristics of Islamic approach to preserving the environment is to highlight the value of rationalization and consumption through moderation. Moderation in all actions and hence sustainability. As Quran verse reads, O children of Adam, dress properly whenever you are at worship. Eat and drink, but do not waste. Surely he doesn't like the wasteful. Also, in another same surah of Arafat, the ayat is, or the verse is 141. The Quran also forbade extravagance in many places where Almighty says, He is the one who produces gardens, both cultivated and wild, and the palm trees, crops of the different flavors, olives and pomegranates, similar in shape but dissimilar in taste. Eat of the fruit they bear and pay the dues at harvest, but do not waste. Surely he does not like the wasteful again.
As you've heard, the three Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity and Islam, share several common principles and teachings regarding sustainability in the environment. And I'd like to speak a little now about humanity. In our faith traditions, we believe that humans are entrusted by God with the task of caring for creation. This, of course, implies a duty to protect and preserve the environment for future generations, which in turn should ensure that we have a deep sense of connection with the earth and all its inhabitants, fostering a commitment to safeguarding the environment. The theme today, Sacred Earth, Interfaith Perspectives on Sustainability, celebrates the common values that Judaism, Islam and Christianity share. Sustainability is indeed intricately linked with principles of justice and equity in all three faith traditions. There is an emphasis on the equitable distribution of resources, ensuring that all people have access to the basic necessities of life, including clean air, water and food. Addressing environmental degradation is seen as essential for promoting social justice and alleviating poverty. The interconnectedness of all life is also a recurring theme in all three Abrahamic faiths, which teach us that human well-being is intertwined with the health of the environment and the welfare of other species. Actions that harm the environment ultimately have consequences for us as human beings and vice versa. The verse I chose for today was again from the Gospel of Matthew. Are not two sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground unperceived by your Father. And even the hairs of your head are all counted. So don't be afraid. You are of more value than many sparrows. This passage that I chose from Matthew's Gospel is in the Christian New Testament, and it reassures us of God's intimate care and attention to all of creation. And it can also offer a profound ecological message. We see reflected in Jesus God's intimate concern for all aspects of creation, no matter how seemingly insignificant, emphasizing the value of every living entity and suggesting a profound connection between humanity and the natural world, affirming the importance of care and compassion for all creatures. It highlights the deep care and concern that Jesus expressed for all of creation, including humanity. In these verses, Jesus uses the example of sparrows, which would have been among the smallest and cheapest birds sold for sacrifice in his time, to illustrate God's attention to even the seemingly insignificant aspects of God's creation. Jesus says that not even a single sparrow falls to the ground without God's knowledge and care, highlighting the intimate involvement of God in the workings of the natural world, demonstrating God's concern for even the smallest creatures. In doing this, Jesus is reassuring us of our worth and value in God's eyes. If God cares for these small creatures, how much more does God care for human beings who are of infinitely greater value in God's sight, affirming the intrinsic worth of humanity and the assurance of divine protection. It encourages us to trust in God's providence and to live without fear, knowing that we are deeply valued and cherished by our Creator. It highlights the intrinsic value of even the smallest and seemingly least significant parts of creation, such as sparrows, which are often overlooked or undervalued by us humans. From an ecological perspective, the words invite us to recognise and respect the inherent worth of all creatures, regardless of their economic value or their utility to us as humans. It jolts us into considering how interconnected and how vital every species is to the ecosystem. By acknowledging that not even a single sparrow falls to ground without being noticed by a caring creator, we are also being reminded of our responsibility towards all life forms. The message encourages us to take a moment to reflect on our actions and their impact on the environment. It calls us to conserve and protect biodiversity, urges us to act responsibly to ensure that no creature is neglected or harmed by our human activities. Embracing this perspective can inspire us to work towards a more sustainable and compassionate world where every living being is valued and protected. While we cannot exactly call Jesus an eco-warrior, his teachings often emphasise stewardship of the earth and care for the natural world, conveying principles that align with environmental ethics, such as emphasising love and care for all creation, including humans and nature. His teachings about love, compassion and responsibility towards others can certainly be interpreted in ways that promote environmental stewardship, teaching us to respect and care for each other and all of creation by protecting ecosystems, conserving resources, combating pollution and living sustainably in reverence for all God's creation.
In response to that, I've just thought of two things. One is that there's a commandment when you plow a field or you cut out the wheat, that you always leave a bit around the edge to share with those who are less fortunate. And the second thing was that in Genesis, God created the world, and in each day he saw what he created and he said it was good.
That's beautiful. Yeah, so Islam on humanity and sustainability. In Islam, it clearly says one who saved the life of one person has saved the whole humanity. So that's the very fundamental, very basic. And also humanity through protecting the resources is another very specific area. Because while promoting the growth, it is critical to protect natural resources to maintain their availability. Prophet Muhammad placed a high value on sustainable agriculture of land, how humans interact with animals, the preservation of the natural resources, and the protection of the natural environment in general. Several sayings of Holy Prophet call for the incentive environmental sustainability in essence. And I quote here, he says, a Muslim who plants a tree or sows a seed and then a bird or a human or an animal eats from it, that is a charity from him. So the whole concept of the charity, the whole concept of the growth, the human growth, the interaction with the religion is all based on the good deeds, small practices and smaller actions. The next session we'll be talking about our responsibility to act. We have our Maria Young, and she from the group Green Spaces for Health, and she will share some ideas for actions. Over to Maria Young. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. Hi everyone. It's great to see such a crowd here this morning, and how inspirational to hear the teachings of the three different books of the three faiths. Very, very interesting indeed. Everything is there already, isn't it? Yeah. Well, this is a great spot because, of course, there's so much space here and there's so much for nature, and there's such activity here. Behind you is the International Solidarity Garden behind the fence, and it was wonderful that the sisters here were generous enough to give this land to people who are, well, the migrant centre really, and they come here every week, and they've been growing crops largely from their own cultures, and it's been a great resource and a great learning, and long may it continue, because there's also a horticulture course here, and the two groups have come together very fruitfully, and that's been a joy to witness. Where we, in our last spot, we were overlooking a field, and that's a great field there now for nature, and again it's part of the landscape of this place, and it's wonderful that it is in existence and it's not disturbed, because I believe there are foxes, there are meadow pipits, there are all sorts of birds down there, and they've got refuge, which of course is what nature needs, particularly in an urban setting. It's quite difficult for nature to find safe places to live. So that's one of the things we're doing at the moment. We're just after getting a load of bird boxes from the Netherlands, and we're trying to cater for the birds that are particularly endangered, the birds on the red list or the amber list. So last week we put up 6 swift boxes for the beautiful swift that comes all the way up from sub-Saharan Africa every year, and their numbers are declining, and that's one of the actions you could do. Actually, you could support the installation of boxes for particular types of birds. So if anybody feels they have a good location, they might get in touch with me. Now, the location you have to be careful about for the swifts, because they'll come back year after year to the same place. So you can't be taking the boxes down. They don't understand that. They'll keep trying to get into the same place. And that's kind of what's been sad about it, really. If they can't get into where they used to be, the chances are they mightn't survive. And of course they have their brood here, and then they go back to Africa again. So they're only here from May. We can expect them next week, actually. So when we installed the boxes in Murphy's Farm in Bishopstown last week, we also put a lure, meaning we played the sound of the bird, and it's on a loop. And that's to attract the birds to these boxes. And the idea is they'll go in and they'll have their chicks, and they leave again in September for warmer climes. So that's only one of many species. There are sand martins, house martins, all sorts of birds. All the birds need our help at the moment. So as we're standing here, I just want to point out something that I'd love to see happen right here in this particular place, and that is, don't mow, let it grow for the month of May. And I remember saying it as well last year. There's a wonderful potential here for the birds and for insects, for food, for forage. That's the problem. A lot of the natural species have nothing to eat. It's a lack of food. It's starvation. And here we have an area where you could leave the grass grow wild and have beautiful paths through it, or you could just have strips of wildness. But by continually cutting the grass, we're denying food for so many species. So I would really appeal to the people here to leave the grass grow for a couple of months in the summer. It's very important. And I not only is it important, it's actually beautiful. And I think we just need to sort of turn our heads around and come to, and realise it's not neglect. It's actually beautiful when you allow all that's beautiful under the ground to come up. And I'm talking about dandelions, birdfoot, trefoil. I'm talking about nettles as well, some thistles. They all are food sources for so many of the creatures that are in trouble now. Our insect population is down by 70%, and this is one simple action all of us can do. Very easy. And there's such a thing as maintained wildness. So, you can leave the grass grow, but you can come along with your lawnmower and cut a lovely serpentine, walk through it, and it'll be lovely. And then you'll have a lot more of nature will just come. And it'll make your walking in this area all the more beautiful. I think all of us can grow plants as well for the different insects, and there's a wonderful resource, it's Biodiversity Ireland. They have a list of the plants now and the shrubs that you can grow for all seasons. And don't forget, it's all seasons, it's not just the summer. And then of course there are trees. Again, we could plant more trees here. The last tree that was planted here was in honour of the wonderful Eileen Lynch, Eileen Dorr, who we miss, who'll be here today, I've no doubt. She was here the last time, I'm sure. We planted an Irish oak, and Frank is here. And Frank, Eileen's husband, helped us plant the Irish oak, and we brought it down from County Clare. It comes from the tree called the Barú tree, which is 1,000 years old up there in County Clare. So I must go down and look at it now, Eileen's tree. So again, come autumn time, don't forget to go out and behave like squirrels and pick up some of the fruit of the native trees. Everyone's talking about all the trees that we have to plant. There aren't enough trees here to plant in Ireland because we haven't really been making use of the abundance of harvest, you know, all those acorns that fall, all of the haws, all of the different fruit of the trees. We should all be collecting some of them and, you know, potting them up at home, and then we can send them out to people who have space to grow them. So I'd encourage you to do that as well. We need to start a lot more tree nurseries across the city, and it's the easiest, simplest thing to do, to pick up an acorn, put it into a bit of soil and watch it grow. And then you can, as I say, give it to somebody who has space for it. So if we all do that, we'd have enough trees really to, I suppose, to further that whole plan of creating forests in both urban and rural areas. I think that's the main things I want to say. So thank you everyone for listening. Oh, and by the way, one last thing is I'm with Green Spaces for Health, and community gardens are a great place for not just the growing of food, but also for biodiversity and growing food for other species, and for installing ponds. One last thing I'll say to you is that I ended up in Toker Community Garden when was it? Wednesday or Thursday evening. I had to collect something, and we installed a pond there. And to see all the starlings going into the water and just playing in the water, and to see the little blue tits drinking of the water, and to see 3 ducks in the air flying from the loch, and seeing them it was just spiritual. It was a spiritual experience. So we need a lot more ponds in Cork. We've hardly any of them, and I'm telling you now, if you install a pond in your garden, it'll bring you such joy. You'll be wondering why you didn't do it sooner. So that's my last call. It'd be wonderful to see a pond here as well, sisters, somewhere around. So, oh, you have a pond over there. There's some actually in the Horticultural Centre as well, yeah. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone. The candle, just to explain, is a metaphor for passing everything on to the future generation. My name's Ursula Heed, I'm 15 years old and I'm a 3rd year student of St Vincent's Secondary School. I'm here to speak to you all today about our planet as we're celebrating Earth Day. I want to talk to inform you all present about my opinion on the situation from a young person's perspective. Every day I go into school seeing posters put up everywhere about the impact we're making on our planet. I read about it in geography textbooks and learn about it in science. It shouldn't be a problem to begin with, and the fact that it is shocking. We're seeing the consequences every day as our summers get hotter and our winters more extreme. We see thousands of deaths a year due to the environment. We've been through a pandemic, but instead a heat wave is killing people. We throw everything away for it to land in oceans or underdeveloped countries, then ask those countries to create more unnecessary products and ship them over for cheap. It's not only inhumane, but ethically disgraceful. Extreme weather events are increasingly common: floods, droughts, storms and hurricanes. The temperature is rising and nothing can adapt to the heat that quickly. Not humans, not animals, nothing. There are so many things we can do to reduce the impact, but instead we use our time on wasting more. Our sea levels are expected to rise by at least 20 centimetres by 2050. This can wipe out small islands, actual islands with small tribes being completely gone. Wildlife is another huge problem. Many species are going extinct. Of course the earth will change over time, but we're causing it to change too quickly, and animals don't have the time to adapt. Animals who have done no harm are dying daily because of our actions. It's my generation and my children that will be stuck fixing the problems that were not created by us. Yes, of course we add to them, but that's because you can't live without certain things in our changing world. Governments have the job to listen and protect our people, but instead of addressing the issue, they're creating unrealistic goals and fight over who should be running the country. The issue now should have been addressed years ago, but there are so many creations and devices made by young people nowadays that can help. Instead of investments and supports, these young people receive nothing from adults. We tend to blame each other and other factors and our mistakes, but it's time to grow up and realise it's our fault. It's time to do something about it instead of wasting efforts discussing it. Yes, awareness is extremely important, but at this point it's about who cares and who doesn't. Now it's a matter of people living and people dying. It has been over 3 years of the war in Ukraine and nearly a year of the recent war in Gaza. How can a child see other children dying with hunger because of war? Children being bombed, pregnant women are dying, and men are the fuel of war. Who's going to stop it? If adults are responsible, who's responsible now? We live in the same planet, but rules and powers in different countries make it difficult to live. War in one part of the world is a threat to the whole world. We're living in a non-peace world, and our dream is peace only. We invested in making weapons rather than putting the money towards poor children and their education. When and how will it be fixed? After everything this generation has gone through and everything the world has gone through, climate change may be our downfall. It may not be your problem, but it is mine and my children and their children. It's getting worse and worse, and it's now expected to be my generation's job to fix a mistake that was not made by us. A huge mistake that could lead to the end of the planet. It's purely unjust, and I think we should take a few minutes to realise what we're doing.
What stood out to me from the video, so now having thought about it more, was this word balance. And then what came through the presentations was that, again, the idea of things being in balance. So humans being in balance with the natural world, and humans being in a right relationship with God. So all of those things being that they impact each other, and that it's important that we keep that sense of balance and proportionality. So not taking more than we need, and showing respect for every part of nature and keeping everything in balance. So that was what I took away.
Thanks very much. Yeah. Is anyone else some response that they might? Yeah. Or maybe even what you're left with. Sometimes to think about it like that, like what are you left with right now? Yeah. I mean, for myself, I guess I just feel more, I guess, in awe of nature, and it feels like a huge responsibility to know how to relate in a meaningful and in a I want to say real way, but it's kind of like in a functional way, in something that's going to work. You know, that it's actually going to work, how we relate and how we deal with our resources and how we continue to look after the needs of each other. What do we really need to do for that to happen? And I think that it's been great to hear, you know, from a spiritual point of view, which I feel the three faiths or any religion or any spiritual practice tries to bring into our thinking and into our being and in how we relate to the practical, you know, the material world that we live in. So it made me look at that. Aman.
Thank you. As I was listening to everybody, you know, I was really moved by what you were saying because, you know, the future are our kids. There's a song. I won't turn into song there, but I just thought it was so important to think about, you know, the way the generations think about, you know, these issues. And it is really a huge privilege to have open space. I think there's a lot of research that's done about, you know, poverty and people not having green spaces, and to have a garden is, you know, at the back of your house is a huge privilege to have. I grew up in a council estate in Glasgow where there was 9 of us in a 2-bedroom flat. I only, got upgraded to my own bed when I was 16. But I grew up with my mother talking about in her village in Pakistan, in Sialkot, talking about how she bathed with buffaloes and how, when they were kids, they used to be at a farm and they used to do all these things. And all of these ideas really fed into my Islam and my Muslimness, and trying to make sense of the passages of the Quran which talk about the being, the vice-regent, or being in charge, being custodians of this earth in whatever way, in whatever means you have. So I think everybody touched on these issues, and it just goes to show the real deep-rootedness that we have in biblical monotheism as Jews, Christians, and Muslims. So I'm really grateful for these spaces and these moments that bring us together as we draw closer together and we draw closer in our humanity.
Yes, anyone else have something that they would like to comment on? Yeah. Just say your name if you would.
Thanks. Hi, I am the communications officer for the sisters, and a number of the sisters have come to me and said how much they have enjoyed this morning and having you all here. And I think the underpinning, just for me personally, was how care for the earth is rooted in faith, no matter what it is that your faith prescribes. That is a grounding of all faith, and it is a way to show that we are all united. So just on that note, I would just like to thank you all for being here on behalf of the sisters, for coming and sharing our space. We're very, very happy to have you here. And thank you to Jerry for all the organization that he did behind the scenes.
So just before we finish, I'll just read one more prayer, yes, to join us all together. Yeah. So this is the prayer of St. Francis, which always, I think, touches any faith, really, in just its relation to nature is so beautiful. So, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me love, so love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.